Hi, MLA Pete Guthrie here. In 2016, the United Nations, along with various countries, including Canada, ratified the Paris Agreement. This agreement aims to keep average global temperature increases to below 2 degrees Celsius. No specific dates have been set as to when emissions targets have to be met, thus allowing countries to have flexibility in determining their own path. Regardless of the agreement terms, Canada, which has environmental, social, and governance, ESG, second to none, should be given credit for already being a world leader in environmental responsibility. Our ethically produced oil and gas, coupled with our massive greenhouse sink, that's CO2 absorbing landscape of mountains, forests, plains, agriculture lands, and large bodies of water, have resulted in a stellar ESG record. As if troubled by these facts, Justin Trudeau made the aggressive goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, GHGs, in Canada to below 30% of 2005 levels by 2030. This equates to a target of 511 megatons of CO2 equivalent, or a total reduction of 220 megatons. Unfortunately, this goal becomes unrealistic when industrial growth since 2005 is considered. Another 84 megaton was added onto former estimates, bringing the total reduction to 304 megaton. From that 304 megaton, 25% is unallocated to any specific industry, and 27% is attributed directly to oil, gas, and electricity sectors, while the remaining reductions depend on decreases of fossil fuel use in categories including buildings, heavy industry, transportation, waste facilities, and agriculture. In July of 2020, the Canadian Energy Centre, they put out a research briefing called Mind the Paris Gap, where they outlined the shortcomings of the Paris Agreement and the detrimental impact it will have on jobs and the economy across Canada. Their research shows that the unallocated portion of the emissions reductions commitment, along with increases since 2005 in industrial output, will produce a gap or a shortfall in meeting Paris of 112 megatons of GHGs. The briefing states Alberta's oil and gas sector alone would be responsible for 28% of this shortfall. Now, from this perspective, meeting this objective would be equivalent to eliminating emissions from Canada's entire manufacturing sector. The research goes on to estimate a federal carbon tax of $116 by 2030 and a significant reduction in GDP growth. The data indicate there would be a $54 billion decline in Canadian GDP, with 13.5 of that being from Alberta alone. Job losses attributed to meeting the Paris gap are estimated at 300,000 full-time equivalent positions. Using available data and ignoring that unallocated portion, I have calculated that Alberta would be required to reduce oil and gas production by 990,000 barrels a day in order to meet Paris goals. This is an amount equal to 25.4% of the current provincial production, and it assumes no further increases in investment for additional crude. Alberta's economy, and thus Canada's, will be devastated if further measures are taken to meet Paris by 2030. And since the 2016 Paris Agreement, we have witnessed the true intent of Justin Trudeau's ideological agenda, and that's the elimination of fossil fuels. The oil and gas industry in Canada is Canada's #1 driver of economic prosperity and the largest contributor to job creation. To deliver such a heavy blow to our economy will lead to more bankruptcies and a decrease of investment in Canada. We have witnessed a dramatic escalation in costs and regulatory burden on Canadians and on industry through Liberal policies such as the carbon tax, Bill C-69, the No More Pipeline Bill, Bill C-48, the West Coast oil tanker ban, methane regulation, and most recently, the federal implementation of net zero. As if these measures weren't enough, the fiscally irresponsible and ideologically driven speech from the throne referenced further legislation of net zero policy and increased targets to exceed Paris by 2030. New taxes are expected to pay for these measures, including a brand new carbon tax called the Clean Fuel Standard. It should be implemented this fall. The new costs to industry have been directly responsible for increased importation of foreign oil to Canada from countries with lower ESG than our countries, and little concern for human rights. Reliance on foreign oil has resulted in a massive missed opportunity for Canada. A flight of capital of investment, decreased drilling activity, and a reduced investment into research and development, as companies are scrambling to stay afloat. This dependence will continue to negatively affect the province, its treasury, and place pressure on future program funding. It would be hypocritical now for me not to mention that the newly elected CPC leader, Erin O'Toole, has agreed to follow Justin Trudeau's lead and support the federal plan to meet Paris targets. Furthermore, during his leadership campaign, he offered support to a net zero policy, which would not be advantageous for resource or industrial sector development. Now, on the flip side, in his first meeting with Premier Legault in Quebec, O'Toole expressed his support for the energy sector, adding that Canadian energy, forest products, and minerals are the best in the world and should be the first choice of that democratic world. O'Toole has also committed to repealing Bill C-69 and C-48, so we should expect to see further CPC commitments that provide policy clarity and are more supportive of the energy sector. Canada should be proud of our ESG record and vigorously defend the innovation occurring in the energy sector. Damaging our industry will only lead to increased emissions on a global scale as demand is replaced by foreign dictators ready to replace Canada's reduced market share. The United States left the Paris Agreement, yet still led the world in GHG emissions reductions. Canada does not require UN policies to dictate our path. We were world leaders before Paris, and we will continue to be. The underlying ambition of the Paris Agreement and other initiatives of this nature is the elimination of fossil fuels. Governments and politicians calling for the implementation of Paris should fully understand and examine the economic impact. Considering the fragile state of our economy due to this pandemic, we should be more cautious of moves that could negatively affect the welfare of our province and our country. Thank you.